Now, in a major development in the fight against climate change, the world's top court, the International Court of Justice, or the ICJ, has ruled that countries can be held legally responsible for causing climate change. The ruling came yesterday, on July 23rd, from the ICJ in The Hague, which is the main judicial body of the United Nations. Although the decision is not legally binding, experts say it carries huge moral and legal weight and could change how climate laws are made and enforced across the world. A coalition of small island nations spearheaded by Vanuatu made a push to ask the UN's highest court, the International Court of Justice, to weigh in on the legal responsibilities that the countries have to combat climate change. Now, it was requested by the UN Secretary General last year after strong demands from Pacific Island nations and young climate activists. He thanked the ICJ after the ruling.
I welcome that the International Court of Justice has issued its historic advisory opinion. They made clear that all states are obligated under international law to protect the global climate system. This is a victory for our planet, for climate justice, and for the power of young people to make a difference. Young Pacific Islanders initiated this call for humanity to the world.
Before we go and break down the ruling, let's first hear it out.
In view of the related practice of states, the Court considers that the duty of states to cooperate for the protection of the environment is a rule whose customary character has been established. The Court thus concludes that under international law, the human right to a clean, healthy and sustainable environment is essential for the enjoyment of other human rights. In view of
All right, now let's break it down for you. The court said that the countries have clear legal duties to fight climate change and protect the environment, not just for people today, but for the future generations as well. It also states that countries that pollute heavily must take the lead in reducing emissions, and these include the richer, developed nations listed under the UN Climate Treaty. The ICJ also warns that nations who fail to act or cause serious harm to the environment can be held legally responsible. That includes paying damages, stopping harmful activities, and promising not to repeat them. Experts say this brings back the issue of historical responsibility, the idea that rich countries who have polluted the world the most in the past should do more now. That topic has faded in recent years, especially after the Paris Agreement, but this ruling puts it front and center again. The decision is expected to influence global talks at the upcoming COP30 climate summit in Brazil. It also boosts the case for loss and damage payments to vulnerable countries like India and small island states who face the worst effects of climate change. The ruling also connects climate change to human rights, saying countries must protect people's right by caring for the environment. Although not legally enforceable, this judgment is seen as a landmark moment that can shift how the world tackles the climate crisis. Several reactions did pour in after the landmark ruling. Here are some.
So today it's been a landmark milestone for climate action, the discourse on climate change. It's very important course correction in this critically important time. For the first time in history, the ICJ has spoken directly about the biggest threat facing humanity, which is climate change. And I want to note that the decision was unanimous.
It's very encouraging. Now, what's the next step? We take it from here. We have we have a great foundation to work from the international level, but making sure that that is translated back to the national and our community level back home.
I think they set out a very, very helpful advisory opinion for further climate cases, both at the domestic level but also at the international level. They also spoke about accountability and remedies. So countries that are facing climate impacts also have the opportunity to seek further legal recourse.
We no longer have big trees. There's coastal erosion continuously. And so it's our diet has also it's changing because some of our traditional crops are no longer growing like before. So we're very happy that this International Court of Justice has ruled in favor of on this issue.
Again, this is a major development in the fight against climate change. The world's top court, the International Court of Justice, has ruled that the countries can be held now legally responsible for causing climate change. This ruling came just yesterday from the ICJ. Now, this is, of course, the main judicial body of the United Nations, and it clearly shows how important this ruling is. Although the decision is not legally binding, experts do say that it carries huge moral and legal weight and can change how climate laws are made and enforced across the world. Now, a coalition of small island nations, which was spearheaded by Vanuatu, the main hero of the story, made a push to ask the UN's highest court, the International Court of Justice, to weigh in on the legal responsibilities that the countries have to combat climate change. It was requested by the UN Secretary General last year after strong demands from Pacific Island nations and young climate activists. He had thanked the ICJ after this historic ruling. Now, let me just break it down, the ruling for you. The court said that the countries have clear legal duties to fight climate change and protect the environment. And it's not just for people today in the present times, but for the future generations as well. It also states that the countries that pollute heavily must take the lead in reducing emissions. These include the richer developed nations like the United States, Russia, and this is, of course, listed under the UN's climate treaty. The ICJ also warns that nations who fail to act or cause serious harm to the environment can be held legally responsible, and that includes paying damages, stopping harmful activities, and promising not to repeat them. Now, experts are saying that this brings back the issue of historical responsibility that a lot of small nations have been asking for. The idea that the rich countries who have polluted the most in the past should do more now. That topic has faded in the recent years, especially after Paris Agreement, but this ruling puts it front and center stage again. The decision is expected to influence global talks at the upcoming COP30 climate summit, which is going to be taking place in Brazil. Again, it also boosts the case for loss and damage payments to vulnerable countries like India and small island states who face the worst effects of climate change. Of course, to now discuss more on the story, we're now being joined by Svein Tvedt from Arendal, Norway. He is the former Assistant Executive Director, UN Environment, also the Chairman of the Worldview International Foundation and Director. Now, let's just go to him now. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thanks for inviting me.
Well, again, let's just go to the main question. If you could just tell us how significant and historical and important this ruling has been for small nations, for big nations, and for entire world right now.
Well, it is, of course, of significance, and it is very important as it is the highest court we have. But as we don't have any direct enforcement mechanisms, the countries are not obliged to follow what the court is saying. So that is the negative side. For instance, I believe that President Trump couldn't care less. So this is one of the difficulties we face. But the importance is that everybody now that is filing cases will refer to this one, and countries around the world is morally obliged to follow what the court is saying. So it will increase the pressure on getting a solution to the climate crisis. And it is, of course, easy to understand why the court is taking this decision, because all scientific evidence is so clear that we are going towards a climate catastrophe without significant actions. Our Foreign Minister Espen Barth Eide put it like this: there is only one threat in the world that is worse than the climate threat, and that is the threat of a total atomic war. So this is where we are. And unfortunately, it goes very fast in the wrong direction. So in that case, you know, the pendulum now is in a way in the wrong end. We have the election of President Trump, and we also have the wars in Ukraine and Gaza taking awareness away from this. But this pendulum will swing back. I only hope it will go fast. And then, of course, cases like this and the High Court decision is very important, because now we are definitively going to a warming above 3 centigrades by the end of the century, maybe more. And you can compare 3 degrees with a fever on 30% on human beings. It goes towards being life-threatening.
Yeah, as you mentioned, and this was, of course, this leads to a lot of these small nations who might not even exist because of the rising seas as well. That being said, now this is something that I do want to understand. So the ruling says that the countries can be held legally responsible for causing climate change. And then it also says that this decision is not legally binding. If you could just break it down for us, what does that mean?
And that is how the High Court is working, and that is also how the climate, the Paris Agreement is working. Countries have agreed to keep global warming not to exceed 1.5 degrees, at least not more than 2 degrees, and everybody has signed. Maybe 5-6 countries haven't signed, but. Then there is a plan how to achieve this. And you know, we have to reduce emissions by half until 2030, and after that we have to halve the emissions every 5 years. But we are not acting like that. There was a recent report from OPEC saying that in 2050. We will have a demand on oil and gas that is 23% higher than now. And at that time, we need almost to have a net zero if we are going to, in a way, keep global climate goals. So there is no way that we can do it. Where we are now, and it goes very fast, as I said, in the wrong direction, is that we need to mobilize people around the world to push governments to save us from this very, very severe crisis that is coming very fast. As you can see with extreme weather, we even now we have had what we call tropic conditions in Norway for the last week or so. The warming is so fast and so severe.
Absolutely. Now, because you mentioned that these countries need to do more, especially the richer ones, do you think that this ruling would, somehow push towards ensuring that these countries will take the responsibility? And how would these small nations like Vanuatu is now happy about this? But do you think it is now capable of actually going and asking for, damage payments from countries like Russia or the U.S.?
No, I don't think. But this is the setting. You know that the biggest threat is emissions from fossil energy, oil and gas, and for that sake also coal. And the way what I call the petrostates is behaving at the climate conferences is that they say that it is demand that have to, in a way, set decide on their production, while most of the countries in the world, they would like to have a phase out of oil and gas, and that is coming up on the next meeting now in Belém in Brazil in November, and it is absolutely the most important case on that there, because there is a growing in a way enforcement of countries that want to phase out fossil energy, and if we don't do that, the demand will still be there, and we will be trapped in extremely severe global heating. So nothing will happen, but fast because of this. But in I think on the next conference of the parties in Brazil in November, there might be a turning point, because and if we go back to the court, then of course this court decision that is behind this interview is extremely important and will be used in these negotiations when we are deciding about the future. So the only way we can do this is in a way to mobilize countries to follow the advice of the scientists, and so far the gap is growing. It is growing dramatically,
right,
between what OPEC is saying and what scientists is saying.
And I absolutely get you, because it doesn't seem like we actually have the time for that. But of course, we would still expect such little wins could become a bigger one when you go into the future. But thank you so much for joining us and giving us your perspective.
Thank you for having me.